Yeah.
Is he hot?
Am I hot?
I don't know.
Oh, I'm
He's
hot.
hotter than you.
Yeah.
Want me to turn you down?
No, he sounds
Do I?
way louder than I do.
All right. Well, I can turn you up in comparison.
Testing.
No,
Is that better?
I don't want peaking.
Oh, you're way too high.
I don't want peaking. That's all I care about. I don't care who's loud or quieter.
Listen, I've been
I don't
watching
think
it.
there's
No
any-
one's been peeking yet.
All right.
And remember, there was that whole line out thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
He did find the setting that was the problem.
Yeah.
Because as soon as he plugged the headphones in, he was like, "Oh my gosh, it's
Yep.
so loud,
Dude, for like the last 7 podcasts, we were just screwing up our own audio.
I know.
It
Nobody-
sounded fine.
Did
after-
anyone catch it? Huh?
It
You
sounded
guys catch
fine
that?
when I was
But no, see, the
listening.
problem was again, right? He's got his headphone out coming out of the Zoom. We had no idea what was getting pumped into the Ninja, and then we're using the Ninja's audio, and the Ninja was boosting the audio levels like
Yeah.
40 dB.
Yeah. I think that's our cold opener. It was very, very simple, very layman.
Yeah,
The last 7 episodes.
Well,
our
it's up
audio's
to me.
been
I'm doing
screwed
the
up.
edit.
yeah, I'm good with that.
I
Yeah, you can
choose
pick
the
whatever you
cold
want.
opener.
But
After last time, you didn't even edit it. You just left the 5 minutes of pre-roll.
well, at least I got my thing out on time.
Was it on time? It was on Friday.
Nope, it was actually Thursday night,
It was.
which is as long as I do not receive it Friday morning, I will not say anything.
Okay.
But
we'll get it out.
I was up till 2 a.m. that night making thumbnails. So
Yeah, no, it was too late. It should have been out sooner.
yeah, man, maybe we'd have better thumbnails if I had more time.
That's a good point.
Roll the intro.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was supposed to intro, so I'm waiting on you.
I don't know. You can intro if you want.
Welcome to the Triflix cast, everybody. We've got Tristan. We've got David. And I'm Cole. So we are Triflix. We do a lot of video and photo goodness. Not only just that, but it goes beyond that. Audio.
Turn me down a little bit, please. For the love of God. He's inside my brain right now. Just
Turn down your headphones.
yeah,
I'm living inside of you.
All right. How's that?
that's better.
Okay.
Dude, I didn't want to interrupt your intro.
As soon as I said audio, you're like,
Audio.
We're better at audio than we would seem we are.
Just a little bit more, David, please.
Well, turn it down again.
Turn it down just a little more.
Oh my
I don't know
God.
what's happening, but my head's going crazy.
Just
All
to
right.
give you guys a scoop on that. So if you don't run a podcast or you don't know much about audio, the audio from our microphones go into a recording device.
It's like a little box.
It's like a little box.
What's a phone?
Well, it's a box.
It's a box, you know.
It's about this size.
What's in the box?
It's a rectangle.
It's a box.
So the audio from our mics go into that, and then it records to an SD card. But we monitor ourselves, our audio in our ears, in our headphones, and that audio, that level is separate.
Yeah.
And so we get to choose how loud. Like if my hearing is not as good as maybe Tristan's, I would like mine turned up so I can hear everything that's happening in the room.
Yep.
And so when we started this podcast, Tristan's was way too loud, and
Yeah.
he got to hear me at a totally different level. So I apologize.
Yeah.
Here,
Even
Cole,
David should
on a whole new
apologize.
level.
That's all boring technical stuff. Do they want to know about that?
No, they don't want to know about
I mean,
that.
they might. I mean, maybe.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
But-
They know now because
You
I
don't
said
know
it.
what you want.
You
We
don't
know
know.
what you want.
Yeah.
We'll tell you what you want.
I'll tell you what you want. You want to go watch the update video. I think that's what you want to watch.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes. David, you've seen it, yes?
Oh, it was amazing. I'm being paid to say it's good.
He's technically is getting paid right now.
It's true. It's true. Say it's good or else.
It's so good. I watched it on repeat like 5 times, and I liked it, and I shared it, and I subscribed again.
Let's do a little round of applause for the editing that Tristan did. Seriously, though. Laugh track.
What was your favorite part, David?
Oh, yeah, I like this, yeah.
Oh, man, I don't
There's
I
so
don't
many good
remember.
parts. I
It's
can't
like,
even
I don't
think.
remember my
I liked
teacher's
the
voice.
music. The music was good.
Wow, okay. I love that sound stripe music.
I actually didn't watch it very many times, and I kind of forgot what all was in it.
I get that though.
I should have preemptively.
You and I have seen it
rewatched
more. Tristan and I have seen it more than
Yeah.
anybody.
Well, I've edited it, so I've seen it
You've seen it
many
You've seen it too much.
times.
quadruple them as many times as
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah, probably. But we shot it here at the table, and we talked about what Triflix is, what we do. So if you aren't familiar, that's a good place to go check it out. And it also we have a lot of B-roll of us working on sets, a lot of shots of some of our client work we've done, some of our professional work for people that pay us, and some people that were nonprofit that we
the things that we talk about every podcast mostly, and you don't ever see.
Yeah,
that's the cool part. Is yes, we're actually legitimately going out here and shooting for people, and we actually have a nice little backlog of like B-roll content of us on set, which is. That's the thing that I found the coolest, to be honest with you. All the B-roll of everybody on set, because it kind of puts it in perspective. Sometimes you get lost in the work, right? We've been so busy that just like going from set to set and like finishing projects and moving on to the next thing. We got to sit back and smell the roses.
The B-roll shot, now that I'm thinking about it, the one is like you were holding up the camera and you had it on the gimbal. And it was doing like a spinning action, and like Tristan just quickly was like, oh, we got to record this. And that was a really good shot to get.
Had no idea he even got it.
Oh, thanks, man. That's what I'm there for.
Yeah, no, I was impressed. And then I was like, hey, look at that. I was just really showing off. We didn't even use that footage in the final product.
Well,
but it came in.
We did. We did. It's just not in that video because we've shot 3 videos for it.
Yes.
And I don't think it was in probably the one you're thinking of, but I did use it.
Oh, okay.
Briefly.
Dang, okay. Now I'm going to have to go back and watch it.
Well, I'll have to double check it. I know it's on the timeline. I don't know.
I don't think it made it in the final cut, to be honest with you.
I'll double check it, but it was a really good shot, so it deserves the viewers.
Cool.
So
I wasn't sure.
So and then also in the video we talk about updates to the website and in addition to like making changes to the visible website and the design and everything that people would see when they visit, we also did a lot of updates to the back end, to the bone works.
Yes. All the important stuff.
All the analytics. So
oh my gosh, yes.
People don't realize whenever you set up a website, they're like, just make it look pretty. But there's so much more that goes into it to have a successful website. And that's what Cole's been working on for the last month or so.
Cole
and longer than a month, but
in conjunction with Dave Doe.
Yes.
Oh no,
yes.
I don't like touching that.
And this we should definitely talk about that at some point, but this is not the episode for it. So
you don't want to talk about it at all?
No.
All right.
No, because we could. The problem is, I think if you get me on it, we're gonna. Well, I think we should talk about where it correlates with your business and maybe what you should be thinking about when it comes to collecting your analytical data between all your sources.
That's a thumbnail right there. How to make a successful website.
Dude, people are just. They're just clicking on the thumbnail because of everything you just said. No, we're not talking about that.
But what are we gonna talk about today, Tristan?
Dude, today we're talking about the perfect camera.
Finally.
Perfect camera.
Tristan has been wanting to talk about this for episode after episode, and like it was even on the outline for last episode.
And
it's
we
been on
went
a lot.
Yeah, it's gone.
But there's something that prompted it this time specifically.
Yes.
Somebody out there in the world is working on the perfect camera, or so they think.
I hope.
Yeah,
We'll
and
see.
that company.
It's a rumor.
That company's DJI, and we've talked about them previously. DJI makes our drones.
They're one of those little startups. They make a lot of products for filmmakers.
They make our gimbals. So drones, the flying camera, the gimbals, the handheld stabilizer for your camera.
Yep.
And they make really good, really robust products.
It's a good word.
Well, it's a really good word because it's true.
It is.
I flew a drone into a tree last week.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So we know for a fact that DJI makes a good product because we can crash our drones on set.
Hashtag not sponsored.
Not sponsored.
Now it was done for the day, for the next 48 hours, but that was only to the limitations of how fast we could get parts from Amazon.
Yeah, 2-day turnaround, $30, and we were back up in the
20.
air. Oh, was it low?
$20, man.
Dude.
It was $10 per set. I could have done it all for the low price of like $9.98, but we bought some more backup parts just in case.
Yeah.
Because now we found a failure point just in case.
Well, I mean, it is nice. They do make the wings to be breakaway, and it's like the cheapest parts. They're designing it so the cheapest are the most likely to break.
Yes.
And that way, when you go to replace it, that's a good product. It's not, they're thinking about the environment. You
Oh,
know?
for sure.
Maybe.
Well, compared to other companies, we'll go down that rabbit hole another day. Because Apple's been ticking me off. But
that's so funny you say that.
yeah, right to repair.
Well, before we started the podcast, they literally just put out a video, and it was something that said like Apple cares, and like the symbol was green, so you know where it's going.
Oh, it's green. Yeah.
Yeah.
I trust
All
it.
right. Well,
They're green.
in your own free time, look up right to repair and why Apple's doesn't care about the environment.
Yeah,
I'm sure they do some things, but there's a
anyways.
lot of other things they could work on as well.
But yeah,
Definitely.
And that's not the point. Today
That's
we're talking
not-
about cameras.
talk about cameras.
DJI.
So I sent an article that I found a couple days ago to Tristan, and DJI is supposedly putting together their first camera, full-fledged camera, and this thing looks insane.
Yeah, there's some
Never seen anything like it.
concept art for it that leaked like last quarter Q4, so last fall. And there were some like rudimentary designs, and then there was some more leaks here recently that look a lot better.
They look much closer to production level.
Yeah.
So with this camera, you said like we're looking for the perfect camera.
Right.
What makes this the perfect camera, or closer to the perfect camera that we're looking for? What checks those boxes for you? What do you want?
Well, DJI has a lot of experience making drones and gimbals, and
Yep.
over the course of the last maybe 10 years since these were introduced to the public market, where someone can go spend $500 and fly or run a drone, they've been developing these apps and these products that are becoming the best of the best. So by far, DJI makes the best gimbal. Is there any comparison in your side?
No.
Yeah.
I know.
DJI makes the best gimbal.
Yeah.
Is there any other drone out there that is under $20,000 that competes with DJI, in your opinion?
Or not in my opinion, no.
Yeah.
Not that's mainstream.
Dude, they go out of their way to find what consumers like. They take the feedback, they apply it, and they make well-rounded applications like on your phone, your little phone apps. So people for the longest time have wanted to be able to monitor what's on their camera on their phone. Why do I need this big old monitor like a computer screen or whatever, or a 7-8 inch monitor for $200 when I have my phone on me? So they started making controllers where your phone plugs in, and you can use that to see what's on your camera, and you can use that to adjust your camera settings, and they just put so much effort into it. So to hear that they're designing their own cameras for their gimbals, back when everybody had to use a GoPro, you took a GoPro, you mounted on a drone. DJI's like, nobody wants to do that. Why would you do that when you could just turn it on and fly with a camera built in? So they go out of their way and they develop their own cameras and start putting them on their drones. Their cameras on their drones now are outperforming, whether it's a little bit of AI software plugged in there where it's doing some like good compression or some good saturation, some good low light denoising. They put a lot of effort into it to give a consumer something that's functional.
Yep.
Does it have the best dynamic range? Maybe not. Does it have the best low light performance? Maybe not. But at the end of the day, as a filmmaker, what matters to me is, does this camera do what I expect it to do every time reliably? And then does it do it in a way that is easy for me to work with? Like, it doesn't, nobody wants to make a video if they have to like dig out all their equipment and hook up 50 things and then run around. It kind of deters people. And what DJI is good at is taking things that people like and enjoy and simplifying it.
So you're expecting DJI to be taking all this like cool, easy to use stuff from their drone cameras and put it into its own little handheld form factor thing?
Yes.
From what when I looked at the render, it looks to be, it kind of looks like are you familiar with their Osmo series?
Yes. Yeah.
So it looks like the higher end Osmo series, like on the front, and then the back is like, it looks like a red. Like it's just kind of like that blocky, larger cinema camera with like all these attachments and things on it.
Yeah.
And I think the batteries look like they go on the back as well. Mm-hmm. And there's 2 handles on each side. So it looks like they're just marrying, all of those things into one, because it's supposed to be a professional camera. So I don't think it's going to appeal to the prosumers or, somebody that's probably buying something from the Osmo range that you just like boot up and roll with. I think it's going to be similar to that use wise, but I think you're going to get way more capability out of it.
Well, the difference between this and the Osmo, from what I could tell, was it looks like it's going to have interchangeable lenses as well.
Yes. And if you...
So, you want to run through what an interchangeable lens is versus the Osmo lens?
Yeah, so when you have a static or like, a built-on lens, it depends upon the technology that's built into, but usually, you're stuck with one focal length. What else? Depends on the lens if you're going to get variable aperture. So you don't have the ability to actually take that lens, the glass on the front of the camera that's like shaping the image and pulling it off and then putting something else on to either extend focal length or extend range, or field of view, things like that.
Yeah. So you just get more options when you have interchangeable.
Way more options.
Yeah.
Which, what do filmmakers like?
Options.
Yeah. Like we just invested in a wide angle.
Yeah.
For our Nikons.
That's a new lens, and it allows us to, normally you see this right in front of you, but what this does is it opens it up, and then you can start to see things off to the side further, a wider degree of view.
Yeah, yes. Humans, it's almost 180. I think it's like 170.
It's super close,
like
yeah.
If you put your hands, stretch them out, you can barely see them on the edges of your vision. And most cameras are a little bit, depending on which lenses you get, it kind of adjusts. It's like this, doing this with your hands.
Pretty much.
Yeah. And it gives you a different image, just whatever you want. More options.
So that's a big deal for sure, especially for filmmakers.
So talking about more options, I have probably a year ago or so have started putting together a list of what features and what options would make a camera perfect. And the cool thing is, some of these options are things that DJI has already incorporated in their drones and gimbals.
Yes.
So to imagine a company that already does these things, they're coming out with a new product, there's probably a really good chance they're going to take these things that I like and then just bring them over to this new product. And that is what gets me really excited. Not having to balance a gimbal anymore, or at least only in the direction. You don't have to like move it back. So normally when you have a gimbal, you'd have your camera device on top of it, and you'd have to like adjust it this way and adjust it this way and adjust it this way, so that way when it moves, it balances.
Yep.
Well, if the only thing you're changing is the lens on the front of your camera, all you'd have to do is adjust it forward and backwards, and it'll still be stable. So that's like 2 or 3 steps out of the process.
Yeah.
And everything else will just be automated.
See, I think the other cool thing that's going to be is, I don't know, again, how familiar, I check these things all the time because I'm just very interested in it, and I'm sure maybe you do as well, but with the Inspire drone, that one, the actual camera module on it, and I think this is what it's going to be most similar to, just at a larger scale. The camera module, the whole thing that attaches to the gimbal, is separate. So the nice thing about that is, and the way that the front of this camera looks, it looks like you will have the same type of modules. And so we're talking not only interchangeable lenses, but sensors.
Oh, okay. So, that's what, like you said, there's going to be a red body looking like on the back. So you think that sensor will be interchangeable in the front that runs back to the processing power at the back end.
Exactly. You're just taking the sensor and the lens off of the body of it and putting it on on a gimbal that's built into the whole camera, and then the computing unit is all behind it.
Yeah.
And they'll make interchangeable. They already make interchangeable camera systems that are tens of thousands of dollars for the Inspire.
Yeah.
And they're beautiful units.
Well, and the thing with that too is that's not a new concept of changing out your sensors on a camera, but it's very difficult because it's not something you do at home. This isn't like I'm just going to take this off of my camera. I'm just going to take the sensor off and grab a new one. This is something that Red does with like their helium. I can't remember what the other sensor is. There's the helium and like the Dragon or whatever. But normally what you do is you take it, put it in a box, you'd ship it off, and like in a couple of days, couple of weeks, you'd get it back and it'd have a new sensor.
Yep.
Why do you want a new sensor? Sensors do different things. You could get one that's really high resolution and shoot 8 or 12K, like the 8K. Who's doing that now? It's the Sigma, I think, does 8K. Red's doing 8K sensors, and then for 12K, Blackmagic has a 12K camera, and all that does, it just means you have more pixels. You have a bunch more points in your image, and then it allows you to like zoom in. So if you're doing like stadium work or something, you want to like zoom in your image on some football player real close, you could do that in post, and that's really cool.
Yes.
But there's other sensors that are maybe a lower resolution, so maybe you don't need to shoot a dude from 150 feet away at 12K. Maybe you're putting it on YouTube, but you really want good low light performance. Well, then you would use a sensor better for low light. You know, there's a lot of applications, and the idea of you can just plug and play. You know, maybe it's not like AI. Maybe it's how fast the lens is, or not how fast the lens is, how fast the sensor is. So then you could do
like slow-mo or something.
Well, yeah,
yeah.
I was going to say specifically like faster autofocus and stuff like that.
I gotcha.
Because that's going to be based off your sensor as well.
Right.
Sony's got that down.
Which, yeah, they do. They're the leaders in that realm.
What makes a perfect camera for you, Cole?
Perfect camera for me? Well, the only problem with me is that I shoot mostly stills. So
yeah,
and that's kind of my
so
realm.
that's different from video. Shooting photography is a lot. What do you look for in your photo cameras?
The funny thing, we were just talking about this the other day. Like I like even on a mirrorless, I like a good mechanical shutter sound. I'm not so much about the silent shutter. Like it's all about the feedback for me, right? Like when you hear that shutter, click, you're like, oh, I just took a picture. Like there's something very satisfying about that, even if it's fast and it just sounds like a machine gun. Like I'm good with that. I know it's shooting the pictures.
Would you shoot a wedding with your shutter on?
No, I wouldn't. I would put on silent shutter like I always do. But I still miss that sound. Like as soon as it's gone, I'm like, did I get it? Am I shooting pictures? Yeah. And another thing that's really high on my list right now that I really like is on the new Sony Alpha 1. Their big dog like photo still camera. Like it's like $6,000. It's an amazing camera. There's no blackout in between shots.
Okay.
So every single time you take a shot, instead of that shutter happening and then you seeing that black in between each shot, you hear the shutter, but there is no blackout in between shots when you're looking through the viewfinder.
So is that a mirrorless camera then?
It is a mirrorless.
Is that
yes.
what that means?
That would be at the top of my list. I've used both, and I prefer mirrorless over a mirrored DSLR any day. And that's just the speed of shooting. Yeah. You're gonna get a higher FPS usually, frames per second. I knew somebody was gonna ask me. Somebody.
What should FPS?
So like I like high FPS. I don't shoot a lot of like action shots, but I like to have the ability to. Because the thing that drove me nuts a ton when I was younger and I used to have cell phones or older cameras was when I tried to do the sport shots or action shots and you'd get blurry shots in between because your camera could not keep up with it. And the crazy thing is with like the Sonys, the autofocus is so fast. The camera itself is so fast when it's shooting these photos, you don't miss anything. Because as a still photographer, that's the biggest concern, right? I don't want to miss anything. If there's, let's say we're shooting a wedding and someone goes in for the first kiss or, or there's a dance or whatever it might be. I mean, the last thing you want to do is miss a shot. And if I know that I've got no blackout so I can see what I'm looking at, I can shoot super fast if I need to. I'm never missing anything. That's where I need to be.
Have you ever missed something?
Probably.
Everybody does.
I can't. I mean,
was there like a moment that like somebody's like, "You missed my first kiss"?
I haven't ever had anybody come to me and say that I've missed something. I know there's probably been a time in my mind where I have, but I'm also very like I will overshoot everything as to try not to. So I mean, I've usually got it backed up. Not to say, I mean, knock on wood, right? I mean, I hope that never happens, but I know it's part of it. So like that would be first up. 2 memory card slots would be nice.
Yeah.
So you have redundancy. Trying to think. I don't know.
How does that add redundancy?
So I've been told I've never used one with dual memory card slots, although I know that the new Z6 II has dual memory card slots and it writes the image to both cards at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah. So that way, if you do lose a card, which as we know
happens,
media can die on shoot. And that's kind of scary. So especially if you're shooting like somebody's newborn photos or engagement photos or something, that's only going to last for a certain amount of time.
We love redundancy here at Triflix LLC.
Yes.
It's great.
We have the 3-2-1 now.
We do have it. We are so good.
Jump
What
off
is-
subject.
3, 2, 1. I don't know.
David, you're the only one that can describe that in a minute.
Do
oh,
it.
Goodness. Okay. So you have data. It's important, and you want to make sure it's safe. And so you keep 3 different copies of it. One needs to be off of location. That's the one. And then 2 is like 2 different copies on site. So that means like kind of like with the 2 SD cards, if you have a computer, you have like 2 different drives that are basically copying and being identical to each other. So if one of them dies, you don't lose all of your data. And there's different ways to do that. And that's a whole other different thing. But you also want to have that same data backed up off-site. So that's 3 different copies, 2 of them like on-site and then 1 off-site.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we got all of our setup. David set up our server. It's in the closet right behind him.
Yep.
Big old 32 terabytes. And then we just got Backblaze
Yeah.
set up. Not sponsoring us, sadly, but
Hashtag
maybe,
not sponsored.
Maybe one
someday.
day.
So we back up everything digitally online. So even if everything burns down, at the end of the day, data is what really carries our business. And we could, as long as we have that data, we could rebuild everything we've built so far.
Yep.
We could re-edit every video.
Oh,
So that's the thing. Redundancy
Redundancy
is
is
big.
big.
Especially when you're capturing moments.
Yeah.
Moments that can't be, reproduced.
And so instead of having a big old server to back up, carrying that around
Yeah.
as you're shooting, you got both cards in there at the same time. So you're just right into each one.
Yep. So that'd be a big feature for me. Honestly, other than that, just making sure you got a good camera body and a nice touchscreen on the backhand side. I wish they made them a little bit larger.
The touchscreens?
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. I don't know. Other than that, battery life. So
the screens has been one of the things I've heard about when people compare mirrorless versus mirrored cameras. Because with the viewfinder on a mirrorless camera is the screen, and if you're like outside and it's bright, it can be hard to see. But the viewfinder on like a mirrored camera, you can just put your eye like right up to it, and it's like all kind of covered and everything. So, but have you ever run into those issues?
No, because sir, you've been misinformed.
Yeah.
The awesome thing about a mirrorless camera, what really comes into play here is when you 90% of all the ones that you see out there, Sonys and Canons and Nikons, they have a viewfinder. But the
they do those.
But the awesome thing is when you go to put your face up to this viewfinder, it is not a succession of mirrors that show you the image that's coming from your sensor. It is it's an OLED screen.
Okay.
Organic light emitting.
So they
diode
put
screen.
2 screens. They put the giant one on the outside, and then they do another one on the end.
Within the viewfinder. So it's not just you seeing, like I said, through the mirrors, through the tunnel. You're seeing your image and all the things that are normally on your screen within the smaller screen up to your eye. So
That's really cool.
if it's too bright, I will put my camera up to my face, and it's usually when I'm shooting real estate outside. And the coolest part about it with the mirrorless is it shows you your full UI. So if I pull it up to my face and shoot a picture and want to review it real fast, I hit the button on the camera to look at my shots, and I can see it within the viewfinder.
That's super cool.
It's awesome.
So there are some pretty big benefits of using mirrorless over digital.
Yeah, and I know that there's pros and cons to all of it, and I know a lot of people that swear by a regular DSLR, and like I said, I've shot both. It's all what works for you the best, because the other huge benefit of a mirrorless is smaller body.
Yep.
There's technically really, there's no really mechanical factors inside the body because it's all digital. And I think that's not only a part of, it's just like switching from a hard drive to an SSD. If you drop a hard drive, you have a larger chance of losing all your data because of all the mechanical pieces inside of it.
Yeah.
Same thing with a DSLR, because there's so much mechanically moving inside of there with the mirrors and everything.
Right.
You have a chance of breaking those, or things getting dislodged, and you just have more robustness in a mirrorless camera. And not only just that, but it's a much smaller package with which, as a run and gun, things like that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So I could go down the rabbit hole a ton here, but I think those are the main things.
Yeah,
so
cool.
I think the perfect camera for stills exists. It's just
exists right now.
Just what does it cost? You know.
Yeah. What do you think? Do you think that's the Sony?
I think
Alpha?
it's the Alpha one. I really do.
Mm.
If I could just go and blow money on a camera like that's for stills specifically, that's probably what it would be.
Mm.
Although I'm not out there for a megapixel count either, but you know, it would be nice.
It'd be cool to take a photo and turn it in the side of a building.
It'd be awesome. At least I'd have the ability, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I almost want to say the A1 shoots in 8K too.
Does it? Wow.
I know a lot of those newer ones do, because I know one of the Canons R something does as well.
I think it's funny cameras can shoot that high of a resolution, but they still struggle to do 4K 60.
Oh, I know.
You know, just
I don't quite understand that either.
yeah.
Yeah, that's about where I would be. So I don't know.
Sweet.
Tristan, what do you got? I
Oh,
know you've
boy.
been gearing up for this. So give me,
Oh boy, here we go.
can I ask you a question real fast?
Yeah.
So when I think about like a video camera, the perfect video camera, one of the things that always comes to mind are built-in NDs.
Ooh. Yeah.
I just think that that's a, you know, I mean, we've struggled sometimes. Like one of the things we should invest in is probably some NDs for the Nikons.
You know what an ND is?
Isn't it neutral density or something like that, right?
It's either neutral or natural. I'm fairly certain it's neutral.
Okay.
You're probably righter than I am.
Google.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say I'm gonna check it real
I can tell you what
fast.
it
Yeah.
does while he looks it up.
Perfect.
All it does is it's like sunglasses for your camera. If it's real bright outside, you put on a pair of sunglasses, and it's
Yeah.
a little circle, and it screws on the front of your lens normally, and that's what the poor people use, like us. However, there's some new cameras out here because there's some cameras, and they have it inside instead of having to screw on your sunglasses or a darker pair of sunglasses or an even darker pair of sunglasses if it's bright outside.
Because it's measured in what?
FDs? I don't know. You
Stops.
Stops.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
you're good. It's okay, buddy.
I didn't know where you were going with that one. Sorry.
Can you usually adjust stops on the camera itself?
Depends on what you're talking about when you say stops.
It's
Yeah.
very true.
What are stops? Tell me about stops.
Well, that's the problem, though. It depends on which you're talking about.
Your aperture's measured in stops.
Yeah.
Your dynamic range is measured in stops.
So is
The
the
stop
ND
is
filters.
like unit. It doesn't really
Essentially,
mean
yeah, it's like a unit of measurement that's kind of universally used in the camera world. And I'm sure we're botching this to a certain degree, but it is used across a lot of products.
So you were asking about built-in NDs.
Yeah,
So instead
sorry,
of
go
having to
ahead.
screw them on,
Mhm.
really expensive cameras have built-in NDs, and normally what it is there's a button in the camera, and you push it, and it'll hit up or down, and it'll slide between your little NDs like they're filters in front of your sensor. And
It's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
it's so cool. And before the electronic ones, you had slides where you would have your camera, and then in between your lens and the camera body, you would have a slide that you would put in and pull out, and that slide would have your ND. So you have ones that screw on the front, ones that slide in, ones that are digital with the electronic, and now there's some cheaper cameras coming out that are like $2,000.
Cheap.
Cheaper than the 10,
Yeah,
20,
they're cheap.
$30,000 cameras that used to do this. Now you can get it for like $2,000, which is exponentially cheaper.
Yes.
And it's just a little plus and minus. And if it's real bright outside, you can just flip through those and bring everything down. It's all in body. You don't have to go buy $200 ND filters. You don't have to clean them all the time. They don't get cracked.
So Tristan, why do you need an ND filter on your camera?
So if it's real bright outside, there's a couple of things you can do in your camera settings to make the image darker. However, that affects the image. One is your shutter speed, and by changing that, it can make your image look really blurry or really sharp, like Saving Private Ryan's one of the best examples, where everybody's like just really jittery looking, and it's capturing a bunch of not frames, but the shutter is opening and closing a lot of times per second. And then depending on how you do that, it'll either make it look really sharp or really blurry. And sometimes you have a specific style you want, so you don't want to change that setting. So the next thing you would change is maybe your aperture. And you can shoot wide open or shoot real close. And what it is, inside your lens, you have these little blades, and they overlap with each other. And as you rotate it, they'll close in or they'll open up. If you shoot wide open, it lets in a lot of light. That would make your image really bright. So if it's dark outside, you'd close it, and that would reduce the amount of light hitting your sensor. So those are two things you could do to reduce light.
But while we're talking about it, what's the problem with where does the aperture, where can that come in to change your image in a way that you might not want it to?
Yeah. So aperture, if you have a specific look you want to go for, maybe you want everything behind you to be real blurry, or maybe you want everything to be flat. An example of wanting a flat image would be, because you see the blurry images on Instagram, they look pretty. You know why you want them.
The bokeh.
But why would you want a flat image? Why would I want me and something really far behind me to be flat? In The Hobbit, it's the Lord of the Rings, or it's called forced perspective. And in those movies, you'll see who is the wizard, the big dude?
Gandalf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I knew that.
Oh, no. He's not a real fan.
I'm not a fanboy.
Out of all the nerdiness that happens on this podcast, this is where you fall apart.
I should shine, but no, mine's Star Wars.
Okay.
So you got Gandalf. He's a giant dude. And then you got Elijah Wood, who's a normal-sized dude. But in the movie, he looks tiny. Elijah Wood and the dude from 50 First Dates or whatever it was.
Oh my god!
Talking about Adam Sandler?
No,
yeah, I didn't know Adam Sandler was in Lord of the Rings.
Rob Schneider?
no, you got the hobbits.
You can do it,
and you got a giant wizard. Now, in real life, they're the same size, but in the movie, the Elijah Wood's a tiny little dude. He's a little hobbit. So the way you would do
Frodo.
Frodo, right.
Please.
Frodo. What do you want me to say? Frodo. All right. So in order to get them to look the same plane, you would shoot at like f/22, which is when your aperture is really closed and it's a real dark image, so they have to add a lot of light. And you would have Gandalf up front, and then a tiny little man in the back. And he's normally a real sized guy, right? And he's like 6 foot, whatever, 5'9". But because you're shooting him really far away, it makes him look tiny in the image. And since you're shooting at f/22 or 22 stops on your aperture, they look like they're real close together. So now you have this tiny little Frodo and this giant sized Gandalf. And that's a reason. So you wouldn't have the option to change your aperture. You'd have to change your ND filters.
Yep.
And that's the only reason that really you should be using NDs is for your lighting.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. That's because for someone who does stills, NDs are not needed.
Really?
Not usually.
Why not?
Because I can change my shutter speed if I need to change how much light I need in an image or not.
They're standing still. There's not going to be blur.
Exactly.
Not even. I was gonna say maybe like for sports or something where like people are moving, because we do a lot of real estate where nothing's moving in the shot, so we could have like a long exposure.
The problem is so if I'm gonna shoot somebody that's moving, I'm gonna use a high shutter speed. So what does that mean, right? I'm gonna have a dark image. Yeah. So at that point, right, I have no reason. The only thing I'm counteracting is the darkness of the image. So I'm probably gonna bump up my ISO, or maybe open up my aperture.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, right? Is I have a little bit more flexibility, but the problem is when it comes to doing your video, you might have to darken an image so that you don't have to, eventually your ISO runs out. You're going to hit the bottom of your ISO, and then you might still have a bright image, and you can't fluctuate your your shutter because of...
Yeah. See, I just don't know enough about photography. I'm learning.
That's okay, man. The only reason I know any of this stuff about video is because of our stuff. Like, I used to be like, oh, whatever, man. I'll just crank up that shutter and shoot at like a 500, 1/500 at like, 1080 at 24. Like, and I'm like, why does this look weird?
So much jargon. Those were really bad settings. You shouldn't do those.
Yeah, please don't do that.
Or you can do it and then learn from it.
Yeah.
What's the main rule when you go to match your frames per second on your video and your shutter speed? What's the usual rule to make sure that you have natural movement?
So you would want it 1/2 times your frames per second. So you want your shutter speed to be 1/2 times. So if you're shooting at like 24 frames per second, then you would want 1/50. It's roughly double because there's not a 1/48.
Right.
And then we just learned like 10 minutes before the podcast about shutter angle, which I feel really dumb about not knowing. Shutter angle and shutter speed are essentially the same thing. It's like decimals and fractions. It's just or cups and liters. It's this pretty much the same thing. You just use a conversion to get between the two.
Yep.
Oh.
But we don't talk about shutter angles because we don't use it unless we're talking about global shutter, because that's really cool. Another thing I would love to have in a camera.
What else? So
yeah.
I asked you the question about the variable NDs.
Okay.
Or the built-in, sorry.
Built-in.
That's the wrong
I think you said
wording.
internal.
Internal ND, yes.
Mhm.
Sorry. Internal, built-in, because variable's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But does that make your list?
Yes. I'm just check them off as we get in there. Built-in NDs. Checked it off. That's something I'd want.
Which the unfortunate thing I think about, and I think what we should do is like we'll go back and forth between this new DJI camera. I don't think that will be possible because of the way that it's set up. There's not enough space in the rig to be able to do a internal
Between the sensor and the lens.
Because the mechanics that it takes, right, to be able to take that shade and pull it in front of the sensor, and maybe I'm wrong, but just from the way it looks, and I don't know if you want to pull it up to double check me here, but it just doesn't look like there's enough space in that body.
Well, like we said, the question is DJI going to make the perfect camera?
Yeah.
If they found a way to include it, they're on their way. But
They're
if
there,
they don't,
right?
they're going to be behind a $2,000 camera.
Yeah.
Because you get with a Blackmagic Pocket 6K for $2,500, you could get a camera that does this already. So
it's true.
I think that's going to be hard to beat. Now, one thing that they're definitely, like based on this design that they've shown online, one thing that they're definitely going to have is a built-in gimbal.
Yes.
Which was never on my list because I didn't think it was possible to have a built-in gimbal in your semi-professional cinema camera. And, you know, like we've talked about gimbals before, it's a stabilizer. It just makes your camera real smooth. So that way, like, you're not jittering all over the place, because what we call like micro movements or micro muscle movements. It's, you know, if you hold your hand out like this, people are like, oh, he must be like stressed or anxious because their hand starts shaking. Well, no matter how strong you are, after 5 minutes of holding your arm out, you're going to start shaking. We don't shoot for 5 minutes when we do a shoot handheld. We shoot for like 10, 15, 20, 3 hours. Do a wedding, it's 8. You're going to be shaking a lot. Normally what you do is you get a heavier camera, because the heavier something is, you have something called inertia. And if you start to move with it, the whole camera is going to sway instead of shake.
Right.
Sway is much more pleasing to the eye.
This is true.
But if you want to cut down on weight and you don't want a really heavy 20-pound rig, the next thing to do is start using electronic motors to stabilize your camera. Cuts down on weight. It's a lot more stable. It looks prettier, in my opinion.
I agree.
You can get a lot more... well, you can tweak the motors too. So that like in the settings, so do you want it to be like tripod mode where it's really stable, like it just locked off? You can have it so that it follows a subject or whatever. There's just the way the camera moves, you have more options and more flexibility. And this is something we've seen with gimbals and drones. So to see that built in, I mean, this is like in their design that they've drawn up and sent out on their concept art that got leaked. It's fundamental to the design of this camera is to have a built-in gimbal. And that'll put them in a very unique position, because nobody else is doing that other than, you know, you put your phone on one or you put a camera on one, but it's not built in.
Do we know how that looks? Is it kind of like they're just stabilizing the sensor, but on extreme level?
Pull up the link that I put in the Trello card real fast.
Yeah.
It's in the comment section in that.
Yeah, we'll put it in the doobly-doo.
Yeah, pull it up real fast, because you'll get to see the concept art or
now,
the render.
We're never going to put a lot of editing in the podcast, because we never say never, but at the same time, this is just a fun riff for us. This is a way for us to get out ideas and communicate things. However, in this one example, David's going to be editing this podcast, and he's going to throw up an image of what we're talking about for this segment, just for this brief point.
So if you're watching the podcast, you
on
can see this
YouTube, which I recommend.
Yeah.
It'll also be in the description.
Yes. And otherwise, go check it out. I believe... it's funny we're going to talk about this now, but I'm pretty sure we can actually put links in. So there should be a link within the description within the podcast. Even if you're listening to it on something else on an app, you should be able to click on this and go to it.
Cool.
And I say should because I don't want to make any promises that I can't keep.
That's outside of my realm of knowledge. I'll take your word for it.
I've seen it before, so I'm sure I can make it happen.
Well, if I don't do it, I just don't care about you guys.
This is true. So what do you think about
do it?
What do you think about that thing? Does it look the way that you thought it was going to look?
It doesn't look like it at all. It looked... That's
Isn't that insane?
No,
it's like nothing we've ever seen.
And the cool part is, normally a gimbal, it only has 3 axes. However, this one is what they call a 4th axis. There's not really a 4th axis, technically. But what it really is like you have roll, pitch, yaw, which is like a gyroscope. But this has what they call like a fourth degree or a fourth rotation, and it's like a little spring. So instead of like holding something in front of you with your arms and moving it up and down, there's a spring at the bottom that adds some resistance and takes some of that weight off of the gimbal itself, and helps distribute it. So whenever you're like walking down a road, it starts to, like start to sway a little bit instead of having those shakes. And that's something we don't even have with our $700 gimbal now.
Yeah. So instead of the motors having to compensate and like constantly like trying to lock you in, that spring is doing just physical force.
Yeah.
And doing
It's
it
like-
automatically.
It's like a shock absorber on a car. It's
Okay.
just
Yeah.
soak up the
Shocks.
bones.
That is a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were riding a $400 beater Honda Civic versus a $60,000 Cadillac. There's a
Yeah.
difference in the way it feels.
I always ride in my $60,000 Cadillac. That's
It's a cheap Cadillac.
then I hop in my
Is it? I don't
beater
know.
Civic afterwards.
Yeah, if
and
you-
I just hate that change.
I've rode
you-
in a beated Civic.
If you buy a brand new Escalade, it's $100,000.
See,
Isn't that stupid?
that sounds crazy.
I agree.
Yeah,
But anyways.
drive it off the lot and drop down that price.
But yeah, to have something like that built in, essentially be able to pull it out of a bag, probably clip on a couple attachments, and then you're
pretty
ready
huge.
to go.
Think about a lot of times it's hard to find a cage or a case that fits our camera now. They're going to produce a case for this.
Probably.
So it's like, I don't have to have a case with like 40 different little slots with a bunch of attachments and stuff. Now you might want one for like lenses or ND filters, or whatever, but you could probably put that in a backpack and it's lighter, it's simpler.
I'm wondering if because they have like a monitor arm off the top of it with a monitor on it, and it's like looks like a multi-angled monitor arm so that you can move it around. It looks like all that's built in.
Yeah. Well, think of it like a Pelican case where it's a giant square, and you'd have to like find one that fits it versus
Right.
like a trumpet or a guitar case that's perfectly shaped for your device.
Yep.
And you just open it up, you take it out, and you hit
Bink.
turn on. That's so cool compared to a lot of the concepts that are out right now. It's neat to see a company that's finding ways to innovate.
Yeah, for sure.
And all they did was the same thing that makes every company great that achieves success in some manner. Is it's usually a company that, one, either rips other people off, or two, in this case, it's a company that looks at a market and says, hey, what do we do really well? And how can we apply what we do really well to something that already exists? Apple, great company at turning things into simple UIs that are well designed, that works really well. That's their niche. That's what they do. And they go to the phone market, they go to the laptop market, they go to the CPU market, and they're like, all right, let's take our engineering and our concepts and apply it to these new technologies. DJI, killer, just absolutely stunning when it came to gimbals. I think that was probably how they got started, or flying drones, probably.
Drones first,
Yeah, because before that, there weren't even gimbals on their drones. It was just you mounted your GoPro.
Yep.
And then they're like, well, let's apply gimbals. And then they started moving into, after that market, they started moving into some more camera work. And then, now they're like, let's throw cameras onto the actual gimbals and on the drones. And they just keep building upon it. So I'm excited to see what they come out with.
It's a long time coming.
Yeah.
So and hopefully they make anything at all, like we said.
Yeah,
These are
well,
rumors.
yeah, there was a camera that was supposed to come out like 6 years ago on Kickstarter, and it was an interchangeable camera that I thought was really cool. Like, change out the sensors, change out your handles, and everything was
Modular.
And they just dropped the ball because they couldn't get the funding.
Yeah.
And the nice part is DJI, we know they got the money.
They've got the money.
So they're an established company that's already sending out products, so it'll be exciting. But there's a couple
What
of
else you
things.
got? Yeah.
Yeah. So ProRes. What is ProRes? It's like you ever get a video from your nephew, your cousin, whatever, your wife, and it says .mp4. Well, that's like what most phones shoot, and it's really hard for video editing software to work with that. So there's specific codecs like .mp4. It's a codec. There's specific codecs that work really well for video editing software, and one is .mov. All that means is it works really well with my computer, so I would like a camera that shoots ProRes internally So that way when I go to edit it, it works well.
Because who designed ProRes?
Apple.
Thank you.
Because Apple's really good at making things functional. I like aspects of their company.
Especially when they're meant to be used on their own products.
Yeah. Yeah, they're really good
Lock-in.
at integration, self-integration.
I like how you call it integration.
What do you think it is?
I call it lock-in.
Lock-in?
Like walled garden.
Walled garden. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
It's okay though. I get it.
I mean, I'm very critical.
I can't say much anymore.
I'm critical of Apple and other things. I like it when their stuff just works though.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. That's the point.
Yeah.
It works.
There's
So,
pluses
I'm
and
learning.
minuses to both sides.
I'm learning.
So yeah, we have cameras that shoot ProRes now. This camera over here.
And this camera over here.
Yeah. So they shoot ProRes, but only to a monitor on top, which means we have to lug around a monitor and we have to mount it. We have to have an extra battery. We have to have a cable and all this stuff. Now, there's a camera that's shooting on David right now that we're borrowing from our friend Abhishek. He's letting us test it out, and it's called a Blackmagic Pocket
Thanks.
Cinema Camera 4K,
Hey.
and it shoots it internal. That's really cool because now instead of having like a monitor and the cable and all the extra stuff attached,
Good save, my friend.
it's all inside.
Stuff.
It's inside. You don't have to deal with that. And the upgraded version of that one that just came out, the 6K version, has the internal ND filters we were talking about. So I thought that was going to be the perfect camera, the 6K, but now we got the DJI.
I think it'd be interesting for a second because like you're talking about ProRes as a format. Well, it works really well in Apple's Final Cut and I think also iMovie. But the thing is with like the MP4 is generally a container, but like that's a whole different thing. But the movies that are or videos that are shot on like your iPhone or made to go up on YouTube, they're optimized for just like condensing all that information down and making it so it doesn't take up a whole bunch of space, which is great if you want to stream it or you just want to make it not take up the space because we like valuable space. We don't want it to be 100 gigs. We want it to be 1 gig.
Yeah. I was going to say, what do you mean by space? But
Space like storage on your phone.
Well, not everybody has unlimited data
Yeah.
at their home or on their phone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like if you wanted to shoot something in RAW, we've talked about that a little bit. It's like as much data as you can capture in an image. If you wanted to shoot RAW, ProRes RAW, or Blackmagic RAW, or Cine RAW, or whatever it is, you would shoot about, I think an hour is like 100 gigabytes or so.
Yeah, it's insane.
Which is insane. Yeah.
But no, it'd be even higher than that because we shoot 4K 24. And that comes out to be about 100 gigabytes for a podcast.
Yeah, so if you shoot above
So
that,
yeah, it'd be like 300 or 400 gigabytes.
Yeah. And so depending on your settings,
could you imagine 12K?
12K would be insane and
Dude,
raw.
you know Linus is filling up terabytes.
He just he likes all the data.
Yeah.
And so it's called RAW because it comes basically directly from that sensor that we've been talking about, and they just throw it all into a file. Usually like on your phone, it goes from your sensor and it goes through like 10 different processing steps to make it look pretty, remove any noise that was in there, like sharpen it. It does things to it.
It's gonna denoise. It's gonna sharpen it.
Yeah.
It's gonna raise that saturation
so
like
many
100
things.
times. It's gonna crank up that contrast, and it's gonna be like
HDR it, you know.
Yeah.
And you don't get any of that with RAW. And with all those processing steps, it's throwing out data because it's condensing it down, and you can't go backwards with that.
Once it's
And
gone,
it's hard.
unless
get
you
anything
use
back.
AI, but then it's
Yeah.
just like guessing at what it should have been, and it's not real, and it rarely works properly.
it's not there yet. It will be one day.
We'll do a whole
It's
other
hard to-
podcast on 2-minute papers someday.
It's hard to undo all that, but with editors like Final Cut, in order to even edit that, it has to like unexpand that compression, and it takes so much longer to even edit it again. And so if you have ProRes, you just pop it in there, and it's like, oh, I know this, and it doesn't have to do anything. And it's super fast. It doesn't waste our time.
I think the best way to put it is it's like, you know, it's like having somebody speak a language to you that you understand. So it's you know, it's like ProRes and like, oh, that's loud. ProRes and Final Cut they speak the same language.
Yeah.
And so, but if you put another format in that it doesn't speak the language, it needs a translator in between everything, which takes more time to get to the end product.
And we see that with Blackmagic Raw.
Yes.
And trying to use that in Adobe. Adobe doesn't natively accept it. And well, they recently added it, but it's really bad. So what you do is you get a third-party plugin and install it in your software, and then it can read Blackmagic Raw. So it's basically like having a translator.
It's like having two translators.
Yeah. However, if you use Blackmagic Raw with DaVinci Resolve, a different video editor built for Blackmagic Raw,
made by Blackmagic.
Made by Blackmagic.
Yeah, right.
All of it's made by Blackmagic, and it's not a walled garden because it's open source. They allow other people to use it, but it works really well with their own software. The same way ProRes works well with Final Cut, and Sony Vegas works really well with whatever Sony shoots.
Probably. Yeah.
And there's a reason I bring them up, and that has to do with sensors inside of your camera.
Yeah.
You get some gyroscopes inside your camera, and it moves around as your camera moves around, and it stores that data. And whenever you plug your computer, your footage into your camera, whatever, you move it to the computer, you can take that data from a Sony camera and put it in the Sony video editing software, and it's like, oh, your camera moved up and down and left and right. Okay, we know how to stabilize your footage in post. And that's
so cool.
That's amazing because it's not guessing how to stabilize it. It's getting the actual data, and then it's able to stabilize your footage in post. So instead of having something really shaky in post, you say you use a gimbal, and it's like it smooths out your footage a little bit, but it's still a little shaky. And then you use your stabilization within the camera, internal stabilization, which is another gyroscope in your camera that helps smooth things out, or it moves the sensor around to help stabilize it. And then you also use that gyroscope and you put it in your software, and then it stabilizes even more. You can have like these amazing crane and dolly shots, or these sliding shots and these pans that are, something you'd see in Hollywood, and it's built into so many different cameras, but you have to use the specific software with the specific camera and the specific settings.
Yeah, by that point, you're like, oh, now I have to get the lenses and the camera and the media, and then I got to get the software, and it's got to work on my computer, and you're like, oh, okay, great.
Yeah, so I would love to have a camera that could do that with some of our software, some Final Cut or something, where it stabilizes with an internal gyroscope that you could send off to the editor.
Apple need to make us a cine camera.
I heard they're working on a camera.
Really?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's
I've
like
not heard
super far in development. It's like, how
like
Apple was working on the iPad in like the 90s.
Right.
They had like lab photos of it leaked like a couple years back. So they're probably working on a camera, and it's not going to be out anytime
Nobody expected them to release their own CPU, and they released it, and it was pretty groundbreaking.
They're about to do a car too, I think.
Well, they've announced that for a long time too.
Yeah.
So I think they need to stick with not announcing things early and just roll them out when they roll them out, because it seems to work a lot better for them.
I agree.
Yeah. So another thing was internal stabilization. We talked about that a little bit. Basically, not the stabilization you send off to the editor with the gyroscope, but inside your camera. As you move your camera around, the sensor inside will move around as well and offer 5-axis stabilization. That's really cool because it's just one less step. You just hit an on button and it just works. And every time you turn your camera on, it saves that setting. That's something our cameras do now. So I like that about Nikon.
It's nice. As you guys have seen, the theme with all of this is stabilization, especially with video. It's very hard to get a stable shot, and having a nice, clean, smooth, stable shot without jitters is tough because we as humans do not work that way.
No. We shaky, especially after some coffee,
Yeah, I feel you.
What else we got on here?
That's all I've had today.
So electronics. So you got your dumb lenses. You got your manual lenses where you have to like turn dials and knobs to make them work. They make really cool images. They look pretty. It gives you a lot of control because you can manually do it yourself. However, computers are really cool. They're really fast, and they handle things pretty well by now. It's 2021.
It is. They are impressive. Yes.
So cameras like Sony have insane autofocus and insane lens stabilization as well. So you have so many other stabilizations we talked about, but there's also a stabilization in the lens and autofocus in the lens. And Autofocus just means, you know, I'm here, my face is in focus. If I walked closer, the camera would automatically keep my face in focus as I get closer and further away. If I cover my face, is it still going to stay in focus on my hand? A bad autofocus would be like, where's the face? And like start looking around everywhere and everything gets blurry and crazy.
And then you just see that thing, we call it racking focus.
Yeah.
And you can just see it going back and forth. It's like trying to find foreground, background, where am I at?
Yeah. Yeah. So I hope DJI's got some good autofocus, and I'm not convinced they will, because
that's tough.
Their drone's autofocus is terrible. You have to like touch the screen for it to work, and then it'll lose it sometimes, or you have to like lock it in. The tree gets too close, and it's like, I gotta focus on the leaf in a tree.
Yeah, I would agree. We focus before every shot, especially with stills.
Yeah. So something like this, we could focus ahead of time and hit, you know, turn off the autofocus once it's set,
which we forgot to do.
We're not moving a lot, and it'll probably be fine.
I had to run and turn off Cole's autofocus.
Is that what you were doing earlier?
Ago. Yep. He was going in and out when he was bringing up his hand, and I was like, I couldn't understand what was going on.
So people watching earlier, you saw an example of bad autofocus.
Yeah, only on my camera though, because the one I set up is Tristan's camera, and I switched it to manual.
Good job, man.
Yep.
Just trying to make me look nice.
Yeah, one of the things that I would request that your video camera has is it remembers settings, and maybe it would give you presets based upon what you're doing.
Ours do not remember settings.
I'm aware.
They have presets-ish.
Kind of.
Function buttons.
Kind of.
We don't want ish. we want presets.
Yes, I just need it. Like we talked about, right? We just need it to work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the whole reason why.
Come on, Apple. We want something that just works.
I'm adding. We were talking about some stuff that we would like that was not on my ideal list.
There you go.
Kind of like,
make the list, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we just need to manufacture our own.
Some people try to do that. It does not go over
Yeah, I was going to say, that would be tough. I mean, think about the years and years and years of just like data and user data and all the things that they had to put together before, you know, cameras have gotten where they are. I mean, Nikon and Canon and stuff, those are older companies.
Yeah, but then you got companies like Samsung who's been like developing phones, and then all of a sudden they're like, we're going to make a camera. And then 2 years later, like, yeah, that was fun. We made the best camera for like 3 years, and then we got bored. It's like
we're done.
The Rick Sanchez meme for Rick and Morty. He's like, I'm bored. Yeah, he goes in, he makes the greatest store ever, and like after a week, he's like, I'm bored, burns it down. That was Samsung making the greatest camera of its time. Probably about 6 years ago now, 7 years.
That was a long time ago.
The NX1. I bought the NX500, which was like the step down, and it was still probably one of the best cameras that I could have got until the Nikon came out, and I was like, ooh, this is tempting.
Right. We both love our Nikons, but now we're definitely thinking twice.
I think we'll definitely keep them as B cameras for a while longer.
Yeah. And I mean,
you want the Sony Alpha, so
yeah, I mean, I do still think that Nikon does tend to shine in certain areas when it comes to stills. But you know, I think we've all talked about it with video capabilities at some point.
Yeah.
We're hoping to get something that's more professional. When you try it, it's just like anything in life, right? When you try to do two things really good, you're going to have shortcomings. Yeah. So when you find something that is specifically made to do one thing really well, it's going to help us out a ton. So that's about getting a video camera that's specifically for video. Yeah.
One of the things that was not a shortcoming, the reason I went with this camera was the fact that it did 10-bit 422. And 10-bit is just the bits of color that you can get. Gotta get those bits.
Yep.
More data.
A lot of colors.
All the more bits you got, the higher the more colors you get. So with standard cameras, it was 8-bit. And let's say, I don't remember the exact number, the exact 100,000, how many thousands, hundreds of thousands or millions of colors that is. But the more you get, I think some cameras shoot up to like 16-bit now, which is double that.
Which is
it's not double, it's exponentially more. But
yes,
the benefit of that is you get more post-production options and like how you move colors around and how you shift colors. It just makes the image look better without changing it, because your image is more vivid and more dynamic. So I'm trying to think of like what an example of that would be. I guess if you had a leaf and you had light shining through it, you're going to see like yellow, and it'll fade as it gets darker, and it'll be like a dark green. So like how many shades of green can you fit between green and yellow? And the more bits you got, the higher that is, the more color within that pixel, or within the set of pixels or cluster. So that was one reason we went with the Nikon over the Sony, which was popular at the time. They're both really great cameras. And they shoot that externally, which is really cool if you have a monitor and you want to carry extra weight. However, since then, a lot of cameras shoot it internally. And I think we're slowly learning. It's like all these features that were amazing 15 years ago on these $100,000 Alexas and, you know, expensive Canons, these cinema cameras came to these cheap cameras, but it was only possible externally. And I don't want to forget that, because we were so excited when these cameras came out for like for $2,000, for $1,200 you can get a camera that does all these cinema features, and now it's like, oh man, it's such a cumbersome job. I have to hook it up. I have to get all these cables.
Yeah, if you guys follow us at all on Instagram and Facebook, there's plenty of pictures of our I don't know, I'd probably say camera A rig. Where we've got a cage and a monitor and a microphone and everything attached to the camera.
It looks cool.
Oh, it looks awesome. Makes it look like a transformer.
Yeah, but it's heavy.
Yes, it's heavy.
My arms are sore after doing the Ninja on the gimbal at like a 6-7 hour shoot for a wedding or a music video.
My arm was messed up after that.
Yeah, do we need to start lifting again?
Well, yes, there are other factors that are coming into play, but...
Or they could just put everything internal so we don't have to carry these huge monitors. So we would
save a ton of weight.
No matter what, we would probably use a monitor. However, it's nicer when, like in the DJI example, it's attached and fixed, so you don't have to like take it off or mount it. Now you lose some options of like where you would want it positioned, but at the same time, it's like they put some thought into it. The positioning's probably going to be in the best spot for you. It's rotatable. It works.
Well, and that's the hard part about the external monitor is it's not just the monitor. You have to put the storage media in the back, and then you also need to attach a battery, and the battery is half the weight.
Yeah.
And so by that point, you've got the screen, the battery, the media, the cord coming off the side, and then the mount to actually mount it on whatever hardware you're using.
And it's usually aluminum or steel because carbon fiber is so expensive.
Yep. Yep. We'd love if everything was carbon, but we also wouldn't be able to afford it.
I did some quick maths back on the 10-bit.
Oh yeah. What do you got?
The difference... So with 8-bit, which is the standard,
right?
Well, the old standard. I think most
on
companies
computers and usually what you see on most screens, that's called 32-bit color, because that's the red, the green, the blue, and the alpha channel, and all of those have 8 bits of data to them. So 8 times 4 is 32. That gives you about 4 billion colors to work with. If you include
not enough.
But when you go to 10-bit, color and probably not the alpha, but that gives you about 1 trillion colors.
So what's 16-bit? Because cameras can do that now, and
I want it. That
it.
is an insane amount. So that's 16 times. I'm going to do 3 because So that's 2 to the power of 48.
I need those colors.
It's a lot of colors.
It is too many colors.
It's not enough.
That is million. That's 281 trillion colors.
So who in their right mind needs that many colors?
I don't know.
People trying to make beautiful imagery.
So it's the same question of who needs 12K footage. You can put up a 1080p video, like a standard video. Your phone could shoot a video higher than that. And you could put it on a movie screen, because we run some movies, and we put them up on a big screen at our local theater, our local nonprofit theater. And when we do it, 1080p looks fine. There's a little bit of stretching. It's not as crisp, but it looks good enough, and you could sit and watch a whole movie of like Avengers or something. You'd be fine with it.
Yeah.
However, 12K is overkill. I mean, you could put it up on the big screen. It would look cool. But at the same point, it's like looking at a 400 refresh rate monitor, 400 frames per second. It's a cool idea. You don't need it. So who does need it? People that want to do editing and post-production.
Exactly.
Yes. With 12K, you can zoom in 4 to 10 times, and the image still looks great. with 16-bit color. You can punch those colors, and you can make red and just do a hue shift and make red look blue or blue look green, and you could just move colors around. You have so much flexibility. 400 refresh rate. Why would you shoot at 400 frames per second? Because you want to slow it down and make a Zack Snyder 300 cut scene. Dude, if you could shoot like 4K 240, you could remake that Zack Snyder movie now where he like dollies on the side and like zooms in. Somebody's like throwing somebody over their shoulder and that zooms out. When they did that, they had like 5 or 6 cameras on this dolly and then just kept doing zoom punches, like zooming as a transition between all these cameras at different focal lengths.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you know, because of different focal lengths, you'd have to do focusing and all this. But But you could recreate that now with maybe a Sony, what is the A7 III
S3?
or whatever? Because it there's a camera for under $3,000 that shoots like 4K 120 frames.
Yeah.
So you could recreate that scene and just keep speed ramping and slowing it down, speeding it up. And because it's 4K, you could zoom in. So
Yeah.
It's about flexibility.
It's all about that post.
Yeah, the more data that you can collect on a shoot, that gives you more flexibility in post. That's what you want.
One other thing on this is that what I find funny is that a lot of people consume their media now through streaming.
Ooh.
And that creates a problem because I heard this yesterday, and I believe this to be a fact. A 1080p Blu-ray movie is going to look better than your 4K stream of it from Netflix.
Yep.
Well, that's
And
because a
that
Blu-ray is like 50 gigabytes, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, and that's because Blu-ray can just pack in all that information. It doesn't have to worry about your internet speed. It doesn't have to worry about anything. If something's rated the read Blu-ray, it can do that. And it can just optimize how much crap's being pumped through there. And 1080p versions on Blu-ray will look 10 times better than your 4K stream, which is just, it's so backwards to me, but it's completely true.
Yep. You just explained to me why people still use Redbox and mail in the DVDs. Because if you could get Blu-ray and you don't mind waiting 2 to 3 days, your movie's going to look pretty darn good.
And they make 4K sexy Blu-rays too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you run into other issues with streaming too, like compression.
Yep. The audio, the blacks are going to get crushed. The audio is going to be kind of muffled. It's
just like anything, right? I mean,
convenience.
It is convenient for sure, but it's just like any of the media that we can consume, whether it be audio, you know, most audio files, they're using older media, and they also have everything with a cable or a cord.
Get some
gold-plated internals. I'm playing only FLAC through this.
If you don't use Laserdisc, what's your problem? What are your problem? I need some Laserdisc.
And we know firsthand that we get to see our footage before it ever gets compressed and put out on the web. Yeah. And there are so many times, whether it's a still image or a video, I put it on our social media channels, and I'm just like,
it makes me sad.
I'm like, seriously,
it hurts my heart.
Yeah,
it ruins the artistic intent.
Well, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but you know when you watch a YouTube video and you go in the bottom right corner and you hit like 720p or 1080p to set the resolution of the video.
Yeah.
You're not changing the resolution of that video. You're changing the video playing. Like it is going into its like catalog. You remember whenever like cars would have like 6 CDs in the interchangeable. Imagine one of those CDs was like 4K video and another one's 2K and another's 1080p and 720. It's like you're hitting next CD and it goes from the 4K one down, and then you click another one and it goes down. So whoever at YouTube, whatever group of engineers designed it, is a bunch of geniuses. As much as I hate the fact that they compress everything, the fact that you can just click that button and it immediately loads up your new video, and a lot of times it's faster than the playback of the old one. It just blows
That's what
me
that
away.
processing time is. When you upload a video to YouTube, it says upload complete, but then it says processing. Yep. And it's literally just going through and downscaling your video of every single version. And that's why I usually get standard definition first, and it looks crappy until like an hour later because it has to make a new version of the thing that you just uploaded.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Get you some big monster cable HDMIs and get you a UHD Blu-ray player.
Yeah. It's digital. It doesn't matter how big the cable is.
Oh, it makes me feel better.
It needs to be gold plated though.
I was gonna say, and it's got to be
gold plated. Platinum. We'll just go platinum.
Yeah.
Black metal.
We're getting close to an hour. We can keep going. What we want to do.
My camera died.
Let's call it.
Your camera died,
Yep, it's dead.
but it's plugged. Oh,
No, it's not. It's the black magic.
we could have plugged that one in.
It's all right.
Hey.
She's dead.
All right, I'm running through this
Black magic
speed
is
round.
black. Look at that.
I'm speed rounding this then.
All right.
Okay.
All right, so we talked about 4K as a
Mhm.
resolution. I want a camera that actually shoots 4K 60 internal
That would be nice.
while shooting ProRes in 10-bit, because there's cameras that can do it, but you got to use their special codecs.
All right, so like $3,000. Got it.
I would spend $3,000 if a camera did all this.
Heard that.
I'd be happy to spend that, because we were considering some other $6K cameras, and they didn't do everything we
We were
wanted.
talking about the
Yeah.
red Komodo, and it's 6.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez.
So medium format cameras are really cool.
Fujifilm.
just came out with
Yeah.
one. However, I really
Massive.
don't need that much flexibility.
No.
Oh, man, I want it though. It looks so good.
Yeah,
It's okay.
I feel like you aren't the type of guy to spend 6K on a camera.
Dude, that giant sensor size, if I had the money to just blow on it, I would do it.
Just that big old shitcher.
Yeah.
So I don't need that, but I'd like a full frame because it
Mhm.
offers better low light. It offers a wider view, so stabilization's a lot easier to do in post. Let's see, full HDMI output. We're testing that out today, actually.
Yeah.
So
We were.
so
Little
the,
connector.
yeah, that's the one that Abby let us borrow.
Mhm.
So normally our cameras use
Thank
like
you, Abby.
mini and micro, and today we got a full HDMI, and the benefit is it's not a weak little jank dude. However, I would like full HDMI. I think what's the better option of HDMI,
I
David?
would rather they
SDI?
move to either SDI, because that's like industry professional standard.
Yep.
It'd be cool if things move to just USB-C, because USB-C can do
Yeah.
DisplayPort,
Ooh.
and then just make everything one cable, and it's
No, that's actually a great
beautiful.
point. So the reason I said HDMI is because most of our monitors and stuff still what you're
Mhm.
looking at right now is a little two HDMIs going in, and our switcher's HDMI. So
Yeah.
I get that.
I would like HDMI. However, ideally everything would just be USB-C by now.
Yeah. One day.
You said dual storage slots, so
Yep.
redundant
Mhm.
storage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's
cool. I
cool.
like that.
That'd be amazing. 'Cause I wouldn't have to lose footage anymore.
Yeah, right.
I've had a couple of those.
I'd be happy if we didn't either.
So, yeah, you don't enjoy explaining that one to the client when we have a reshoot.
Yeah, it's no fun.
Yeah,
Mm.
doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's really inconvenient.
Everybody has at least one of those,
Oh, yeah.
or two.
It's very rare.
Ooh, what if it was like audio where it records two at different like dBs, so like different gains, because like you have like a
we were
corrective.
running into?
Yeah, but like
Yeah, I
like
see what you're saying.
whenever you record it, it does like a safety one at a lower.
Just in case.
Just
right?
in case, like you can blend your shots. Maybe we've talked about this before. Like you're doing an interior to exterior shot, so like you're inside and you want to transition to outside.
Mhm.
So
You
it's
could
like
go in your-
audio HDR.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
So while it is also beneficial for redundancy, it can
Mhm.
actually make your image just that much better because you're taking an image that's like its settings are for a really bright scene and a setting that's for a really dark scene, and then in post you take those two files and you just overlap them, and then take the highs from one and take the lows from the other. So if somebody's like sitting here in front of a
Manual
window,
HDR.
That'd be
well,
tight.
I mean that's better than what we got now. There's not really an option
Yeah.
for video.
Let's
I
just
can't-
buy 3 cameras, put them all right next to each other in just slightly different settings. And
yeah,
but
be
like
fine.
like we
Just
said,
blend it.
Yeah.
the goal is to be
Fix it in
internal.
post.
Yes.
Just fix it in post.
Give me HDR internal.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
HDR internal. So cheese grade
Cheese?
cheese grade is the term for like
the mounting
a
points?
mounting point. So it looks like a cheese grade board where it has a bunch of holes in it with
Mhm.
threads, and you can mount a bunch of
Smart, yeah.
exterior points or whatever. So like handles and extra grips or storage devices, you can mount that all to the outside. High-end cinema cameras have that built into the body. Low-end ones, we have to like buy a cage, and that adds extra weight. If it was just built into the body, that would be
Some cases, extra weight's good, like we've talked about.
it can be. However,
Depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
but if
Yeah.
DJI gets their built-in gimbal, then I don't need extra weight. I want
don't
less.
need anything.
It's all
else.
there.
Flip out screen.
Hmm.
Something that lets me see it from some extra angles.
Didn't the camera do a wireless screen that like actually pops off?
Ooh, actually, that sounds way better.
That'd be tight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh, maybe. I don't.
But you would still
I
have
don't
to
want
have
to connect it though.
not just that, but you would still want to have some actuation when it's on the camera.
Yeah.
Not just, it pops off, because then what do you do when you got to put it somewhere else?
Okay, what if what if it was like it could pop off though. Like it was articulating, but there was like the same way lenses, like you can change all the dials on your lenses, like
just
you
slide
could
it out.
Yeah, like there was a release mechanism and then it could come out and then you could like use it as an external monitor.
Yeah.
And then
That'd
you
be
just plug it back on, right?
That would be really nice.
Okay,
That
I
was
want
exactly
that,
what
but
I was
nobody
thinking.
does it. So
Well, hey,
But I would still want to
camera companies.
Yeah.
Free ideas.
But I would still want to view the camera itself would have to have a viewfinder.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
on the top.
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
Just think
like
about it.
like the display with your settings and stuff.
No, the tiny little window on the top.
Yeah, because let's say you detach it, right?
Uh-huh.
And you want to use it as a wireless monitor for like a director or something, and you got a camera operator. The camera operator still has to see the feed.
Okay, so what if it had a video out, and then if you need the director to have his own viewfinder, you could give him that wireless one.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So
That works too. Just thinking.
Regardless, I
Thinking
would
out
like
loud.
an articulating one. No, that
I
would
get
be
it.
Cool.
Plenty of different ways to skin a cat.
Shoot.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Sorry, PETA.
Nah.
So the new FX3 came out with tally lights, something I've never seen before on a camera.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So when you hit
I am-
record, what happens, Cole?
Oh
what
my
happens when you
gosh.
hit record?
There's like 3 different red blinking lights on this camera, like
That's a
the
lot.
front, the back, and on the side and in the screen. And that way you know when it's recording. Because what's the worst thing, David? What happens?
If you don't, you get halfway through the podcast and you realize you didn't hit record on the audio.
Is that from
recorder.
experience? Has we had this happen?
No, not as recently as
I was
it
like,
is
did
right
that
now.
Oh no.
We only have it on the recorder. It's fine because I made sure it's not peaking. It's not like we ever use the other one anyway.
What?
It's
We're
not
good. Keep
recording
going.
on our switcher. We're fine. We're good. It's recording up here.
Oh, okay. So we got video.
Yes.
But-
we got
Oh
video
my
and audio.
gosh, I am.
No, we're good, buddy. We're good, buddy.
We're all good.
So
Redundancies. That's why we have them, because
Yeah.
David can't do his job.
Hey, redundancy.
Well, I'm glad we fixed.
Well,
our
here, let me
audio
just
issue.
switch to my camera real quick. Oh, wait, I can't.
Yeah. So
We're much better with professional work, guys. Okay, this is something.
This is just for us.
all right, I got 2 things left.
Come on, roll it out.
Dynamic range.
Lots of it.
I
all of it.
want more
I want, like,
internal
50 stops.
dynamic range. 13 stops at least would be really cool. And that just means
Yes.
if I'm outside,
Mhm.
we were talking about getting gosh, I'm so sad now.
What the audio?
Because of
It's
the-
fine. You don't
no,
have to worry
not
about
because
it.
of the audio, but because I thought we didn't record video for the podcast.
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's-
Oh, yeah. That
It
would.
gave you that like sinking feeling
I was
when you're like, oh.
"Dude,
Oh man.
I put so much effort in the script on this one.
So the human eye, it's around 12 stops, isn't it? So you want to have one step above.
brother.
What?
The
What-
human eye is like over 20 stops a day.
Oh yeah, there's
Okay.
a ton on the human eye.
Yeah, so,
So
like if
would we
you're
want it to be almost that much?
no, Corridor Digital's done a video on that before, and
That's
it's
true.
basically like if you're outside at night under a street lamp, you can see in the dark, and you can also tell what the light is, and that's a huge amount of range because you're going from pitch black, and your eye could interpret it to a light.
21 stops on the
21,
human eye.
21.
yeah, so just over 20. I don't need that much. 13's good enough. I think our
Okay.
cameras right now shoot 11.
So this was December of 2020. It says currently the best cameras on the market have a dynamic range of around 13 stops on average.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it depends on how you measure it because there's a lot of companies that validate dynamic range. I don't know who's saying that the max is 13 because there's cameras that claim 15. So somebody's using
Did I
a
say
different
13?
metric. Yeah.
It said 13.
Says on average around 15 stops.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's
So
yeah.
that's
Paul,
gonna
so
be
good.
your tens of thousand, $100,000 cinema Alexas and your
Really.
maybe some Black Magics. For about 4 or 5 under 10 grand, you could get a camera that shoots up to 15 stops of dynamic range, and that's at a cost. Maybe
Right.
it's lower frame rates, like less frames per second, or a specific ISO range, so like the brightness of the of your image.
Holy moly!
I want
you're
all of
right.
these things to work at the same time. I want 13 stops dynamic range when I shoot 4K 60 FPS on my full frame sensor without a crop, so like the image isn't getting cut in. I want 10-bit. I want ProRAWs, and I want it to do all these things at the same time. And a lot of cameras can do these things, but it's at a trade-off. You could do 4K, but you can't do 10-bit, or you can do ProRes, but you can't do it with this resolution or whatever. So dynamic range is really cool. And the last thing, ironically, is audio. I want some options for my audio inputs and audio outputs. Maybe a full-size XLR, maybe an XLR mini, whatever. I just want some options so that way we have some redundancy. We have good headphones that we can listen with, like some nice cans, because everybody on set really likes their cans.
Hey, they're good.
Not a fan of these, to be honest with you, the ones we have on. But
Do you think it's the headphones or do you think it's the pads?
I think it's probably the pads.
Yeah.
They're very uncomfortable.
They're very
Replace the
plasticky.
pads. Yeah.
We need some. How do those feel?
They're not bad. I give it like an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I know they're not perfect.
I give these a 6.
If you would have said 10, I would have said you're a liar.
Yeah.
8 out of 10. I can put up with it. Yeah.
I might give these like a 3 or a 4.
Yeah, I don't like those.
4?
It's killing my head.
Yeah.
Maybe I just don't know quality. That's why I'm like,
That's
I
a
hate
fact.
all of these headphones and keyboards and da 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 da. It's because
I want my keyboard to make no noise at all. I didn't want it to be a touch screen.
Yeah.
Ew.
We'll talk shop about keyboards
Ew.
some other time.
Are those all your
Yeah.
points?
That was all of my points.
Okay, guys.
We'll have them in the description notes or comments somewhere.
Yeah.
And if you find a camera with all these things, let me know and I'll give you
$2.
a $100 finder's fee if you find me a camera that does every one of these things internally.
Wow. Okay, there you go.
I'll give you $100.
It's on the
Way to
podcast,
get
everybody.
scammed.
I will not. So
Yeah. I know.
Tristan will.
And then I gotta go buy the camera. There, you know, somebody out there's gonna be like, I found this and it's like a $300,000 camera. Like, gosh, no.
Right now, you
No,
gotta give
it
somebody
has,
$100.
it has to be under 10K. It has to be under
Yes.
a $10,000.
What are we gonna talk about next week?
We'll talk shop
got
on
lots-
keyboards for at least 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
And what was the other thing we were wanting to earlier on in the podcast?
I think one of the things we need to talk about next week is as Tristan and I have been working together today at his house, my new M1 MacBook showed up. So we will discuss how my transition to my first ever Mac in my 28 years of existence.
You will love it.
Yeah, because you'll have 2 weeks of use by then.
Yeah. So I will be
Ooh.
learning Final Cut and seeing how differently Adobe runs on an Apple.
Poor thing.
So I'm interested to see, and this will be our first M1 between all of us. So their new processor. So we're gonna give that a shot. We'll talk about that next time.
Yeah.
What about like making your own style? I've been following a
Yeah.
lot of artists that
Let's do it.
are like paving a
Talk about
way.
I would love to talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about what it means to make your own style as an artist.
Sweet.
And
And
how
I'm
to-
sure
how to
we'll have
steal
some
it.
other stuff that we'll sprinkle in there. We've got a lot of topics we've been carrying over from episode to episode. So
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, this is probably our longest podcast we've ever done. I hope you
Yep.
guys enjoy it, or you didn't, but at least you stuck around. So then, you
Either
can
way,
hit-
we love you for
if you
listening.
didn't like it and you stuck around for an hour and a half, you can hit dislike. I won't take it personally.
Oh, hey, you know what? While we're talking about that, real fast,
Okay.
if any of you are using Apple Podcast, leave us a review.
And if you're not, make an account and go leave a review.
Yeah. And if you can't do any of those things, because I was going to say you're like me, but I can't say that anymore. If you're listening specifically on an Android phone, or maybe you have a PC at home, there are multiple other ways. Send us a message through Instagram or Facebook, or go to the website and contact us through that, or send us an email, or even call us.
Why would they
Gosh.
want to do that? Why would they do any of this?
I don't know.
Because we value your feedback more than you know. And I'm not just saying that because I'm not just saying that to say that. We really do. We make this at the end of the day so that people will enjoy it. They might be able to get some edification out of it. Hopefully that's the case. And maybe we just suck and we don't know it because no one's told us that yet.
Yeah. Tell us how we.
So we want to hear these things.
Do we?
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Peace.
Bye.